Even when he has to sit in the courtroom, President Trump is still finding time to campaign and show support for we, the people. Joining me now, senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America, former chief counsel for oversight for the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He is also the author of Created Equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words, a brilliant, truly brilliant lawyer, Mark Paoletta. What a pleasure to have you on the program, Mark.
Hey, Kimberly, thanks for having me on.
All
Big day.
right. So, yeah, we're very excited to have you, and especially today with everything going on. I just want to get sort of your general top line, takeaways from oral arguments today at the United States Supreme Court. And what stood out to you?
Another good day for President Trump. He's on a string of them. I think the court's going to find that, of course, the president has immunity for his official acts for criminal prosecutions. He already has it for the civil immunity, right? And so
Sure.
the idea that this case is even before the Supreme Court, right, is just crazy. This came up from the DC Circuit, right, saying that the president didn't have any immunity for official acts for criminal prosecution, which is just ahistorical and would cripple the presidency. And I think the Supreme Court today, the justices, particularly Chief Justice Roberts, Thomas, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, all saw that this is a terrible idea. It's not based in the Constitution, and that they are going to send it back down. I think the official acts, President Trump is not arguing that private acts are immune, but they're going to sort it out send it back down to the district court. So kicking it past the November elections.
All right. Well, can you offer some insights on how we should kind of view the concept, generally speaking, of presidential immunity? Now, the Trump team cited some case law, specifically Fitzgerald versus Nixon and even Marbury versus Madison. I heard that brought up a couple of times as offering some key precedent that is controlling, illuminating on the issue. How would you describe sort of the high court's jurisprudence on the issue at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with Marbury. Marbury said that, this is Marshall, that presidential official acts are not reviewable, never reviewable in court. Justice Story, another great justice on the Supreme Court, also said the same thing. Fitzgerald, 1982 case against President Nixon, said that the president is immune from any civil cases, liability for the outer perimeter of his official acts. So it's very clear. And in fact, the Constitution, right, sets up impeachment as the mechanism by which you'd hold a president accountable. And that says that you are impeached and convicted. And then if you're convicted, Kimberly, right, then you can be prosecuted. So I think that founders, even though the government is trying to say, oh, this isn't in the immunity is not clearly in the Constitution. I think it is in its text and structure that they set up a mechanism in the impeachment clause that deals with this. I think they wanted to make sure that presidents weren't worried, right? They want a vigorous, as John Sauer said, a vigorous president who can take action, can protect our liberties, protect our country, and not worry that when I leave office, I'm going to be prosecuted by my opponent once I leave office. And you know what? For 200 plus years, that's the way it worked, right? So presidents knew that they wouldn't face this stuff until, of course, this lawfare has happened since President Trump came on the scene in 2016, and the left has just, in my mind, lost their marbles and wants to destroy the presidency to take out President Trump. That's what they're doing. And I think the justices today saw that this is a very dangerous road we're going down. You saw Justice Alito saying, hey, if this is the road we're going down, why wouldn't every president pardon himself going out the door, right?
Literally.
And again, you saw Justice Kavanaugh picking up on, we had this terrible law, right, back in the 80s called the Independent Counsel Act, right? That, as he said, hampered Presidents Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, right, with the prospect of being prosecuted by these independent counsels that were accountable to nobody. They were searching and hunting for the president of the United States. That's what they're doing here. And so, and Dreeben, who I thought did a terrible job, Michael Dreeben, again,
not good.
Yeah, not good. A longtime litigator at the Supreme Court in the Solicitor General's office. Your viewers should know that he's lost lots of Supreme Court cases, several at least, by 9-0, 8-0 decisions, right, against him. And so he was making these arguments that, of course, there are guardrails. The Justice Department are all good and honorable people. What we see, of course, is that this Justice Department, and I'd say for many, many years, has been weaponized against conservatives, right? And that they're going after President Trump and his supporters. And so this is not a adequate guardrail, as Dreeben was trying to say. In fact, when he talked about the independent counsel, in fact, that Lawrence Walsh didn't indict anybody at the end of the day, he actually did. He indicted Cap Weinberger. I was in the Bush 41 White House, in the White House counsel's office. He indicted Cap Weinberger for this bogus charge of withholding documents, I think that were in the Library of Congress at the time. And the only reason he didn't prosecute him is because President Trump pardoned him on one of his last acts as president. I helped write that pardon. So Dreeben was dishonest and living in a fantasy land with respect to the guardrails that he says are attendant in the sort of the structure of our government.
Yeah, well, let's see if he gets another like a vicious loss again. I don't know. It was not good. But let's talk about someone who I think is outstanding, and that's Justice Thomas. He also made an interesting point during oral arguments, asking why past presidents were never prosecuted for orchestrating violent coups in operating Mongoose in Cuba.
Right. A great question. Justice Thomas, obviously my favorite justice and a dear friend, always hits the nail on the head with his questions out of the gate. And that's exactly it. Why haven't presidents? Why? Because they're not subject. They do have this immunity, and nobody would have thought that they didn't. And it's this norm-breaking Biden Justice Department that brings this into focus. And you saw some of the justices asking after Justice Thomas raised this, right, about FDR interning Japanese citizens, right?
Sure.
Even in the brief of Sauer.
Those are very good questions, though, when you think about it. In terms of historical precedent, nothing was done then, but now it is to Trump.
Right. And again, if we're in this new world, what does Joe Biden face, right? By allowing 10 million illegals to enter our country, right? To commit crimes, gang members, right? People on the terrorist list. And he's doing nothing about it. His throwing Israel under the bus, right? Why? Because he wants votes in Michigan. Is that a crime? Okay. Those are the kinds of things that every president, including President Biden, if they adopted this view, which they won't, would have to face. And that's why it's such a ridiculous, dangerous argument about the president not having immunity from criminal prosecution for his official act. Of course he does. That's the answer. Of course he does.
Yeah, it's nonsensical to suggest otherwise. You enjoy, I'm jealous, a close personal relationship with Justice Thomas and his wife, Ginny. Justice Thomas, as we all know, as the world knows, has been the victim of some reprehensible, disgusting smear campaigns, including calls that he should recuse himself from this case and others. But the facts don't support that, whatsoever. These demands that are just, reckless and have no logical basis in them whatsoever.
Yeah, Kimberly, I've been writing on defending Justice Thomas. I've testified before Congress. I kind of equate it to the attacks on President Trump. The left is gaslighting the American people. They come up with these recusal standards, just like in this case today, where they claim Justice Thomas had to recuse because of Ginny Thomas's political activism. He doesn't. There's nothing in the rules or the recusal laws that require that. And they ignore all of these other examples of other justices, Justice Ginsburg, sitting on cases where her husband, Lawfare, appeared before the Supreme Court and she never recused. You may, from California, remember Judge Reinhardt, the most liberal judge in the federal circuit at the time, in the country, in fact, and his wife was the head of the ACLU, Southern California chapter, and she filed a brief in the case below on the same-sex marriage case, and he didn't recuse. And you know what? Stephen Gillers and the left sort of ethics world celebrated him and said, of course he doesn't have to recuse because they have separate views, they're separate people, and the idea that he would be persuaded by his wife, or you can impute her views to him, is sexist. And of course, when it comes to Justice Thomas and his wife, all bets are off. So they want to destroy the Supreme Court. They want to attack the Supreme Court in order to get at Justice Thomas. I'll just say he's the 10th longest serving justice in history now. About a week ago, he crossed that barrier. 750, or milestone, 750 opinions. He has moved the Supreme Court his way. It's the Thomas Court. And I think his his example, both in his jurisprudence and in his personal courage, has been, something we should celebrate as Americans.
Oh, I
And
absolutely agree.
he did a great job today pointing out some of the great arguments as to why I think this is a problem to not have presidential immunity for official acts.
Yeah, he's truly a genius. I mean, an unbelievable legal scholar. I think one of the best, if not the best, that we've had to serve on the court. And I think history will remember him, that way as well. And today was just another kind of shining example of his jurisprudence and his excellence. More broadly, we're seeing all of these high-profile landmark cases. They're intersecting, and partisan politics are infecting, like a disease, our justice system. We also had the indictments yesterday in Arizona.
Yeah.
How do you think this moment in history changes the trajectory of, practicing law, teaching law, in fact, even for that matter, in the years and decades to come?
It is a chilling time. Those indictments yesterday, outrageous. People challenging, elections that they believe were fraudulent and had voting irregularities. Lots of evidence that in fighting for what they believe in, and they're getting prosecuted for it. This is a banana republic, and it's dangerous. I'm always an optimist, Kimberly, and that we will get through this, and we need to fight hard, and we will see it on the other side, and things will get better. But we need to stand strong, and all of these folks we need to support because it's outrageous. Jeff Clark is a fellow at the Center for Renewing America, where I'm a senior fellow, and he has been indicted. He's been disbarred, all for making legal arguments and trying to defend the president. And they're criminalizing that, and that's what's
Terrible.
happening
Yeah,
in
we've
this
had him on
country.
the program. It's
He's a
so
great guy.
un-American.
Yeah, it's so un-American, and they're doing it. They dragged Ginny Thomas into the January 6th investigation. I represented her in that case, and for expressing her opinions, about the 2020 election. If you recall, when she back in 2012, she expressed her view that the Obamacare was a bad law, and they wanted Justice Thomas to recuse, and they wanted to impeach Justice Thomas for not recusing on this case. So all of these we call it lawfare, election interference. It's to intimidate lawyers now, and others, but in this case, the lawyers, from defending, battling, fighting for the person they want to be president in a lawful, legal way. That's what's chilling about this.
It really is. Chilling is the right word. Yeah, it's just an absolute, disgrace. Let's talk about this, though, because I think it's to give the good folks at home some insight. If you can talk for a moment about the deliberation, that occurs with these justices, like inside chambers. What is the process like? What are they going through kind of right now as the world is able to hear, the audio and whatnot of the deliberations and the questions asked?
Sure. So today, the court sits Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They added this case as a special case on today, which is a Thursday, when they normally don't sit. They'll likely sit tomorrow and vote on it. Typically, the court sits Monday, Tuesday, votes on Wednesday on the Monday, Tuesday cases, and then the Wednesday cases, they vote on Friday. So they have conference on Friday, typically, and I think they will tomorrow. And that's where the justices sit down in a conference room, just them, no law clerks, and they go in seniority in terms of how they're going to vote. And they go around the table, and it's very civil, and they discuss their reasons and the like, and then they take a vote. And then once they take a vote, whoever the senior justice is in the majority will assign the opinion. He can assign it to himself or herself or to somebody else. And the senior justice in the minority would assign the case to somebody in the minority to write. There could be concurrences, there could be separate dissents, all that sort of stuff, but there's going to be an opinion for the court that the senior justice will assign, and same thing for the kind of the dissent. Less so important, it's not the dissent for the court, but that's how it will work. My sense is that they will get this out certainly by the end of June. I don't know if they're going to move quicker than that on this case. It's an important case. Obviously, they fast tracked it to take this oral argument, but I don't think. I think that sending it down, which is what I think they're going to do, and remand it down to the district court, right, where you're going to have this Judge Chunkin, who was reckless in my view, in her and completely wrong in her opinion. She's going to have to go back now and go through what's official, what's private, and then also like with respect to the private, what is there in terms of
Sure.
the actions. I think what President Trump was doing was trying to protect the integrity of the elections, and they're criminalizing that conduct, which is wrong. But the point is, it's going to go back down to the Supreme Court. They will take it up on Friday, my sense. They will vote on it. They will sign opinions, and then there's a long process to write those opinions. They circulate those opinions, amongst each other, and make edits based on the comments they get back from their colleagues. Justice Thomas used to talk about, I'm not sure how many briefs were filed. You have the sort of the petitioner, both sides filing the briefs, and then you have a bunch of amicus briefs, and some of them are referenced today in the court. So a lot of material to get through. You had some of the oral argument that will impact their decision making, but I expect the decision by June, maybe a little bit sooner. But but if that's going back down, Kimberly, as I expect it will, then that case won't be decided until long after the election. District Court will make a ruling. It'll get appealed up to the DC Circuit again, and then that ruling will get appealed back up to the Supreme Court. So you're looking at something that's probably into next year in terms of a decision.
So, it's going to be very interesting. It was fascinating, to listen to it, today and kind of get a sense and a gauge of where you think they're going to go on this. It's obviously a very important case for American political history and for American jurisprudence. But some very smart people in the room.
Yeah, I think probably the most significant case, certainly this term and maybe for a long time. I mean, this is about the presidency. And just think about this too. Congress, senators and representatives have immunity. It's the speech and debate clause. But the way the courts interpret it is much broader than just speaking on the floor. You can't arrest a member of Congress driving to a vote. Right. So the court has made it broader, to protect those members of Congress. Judges and justices have immunity for their official acts. That's not in the Constitution. So it's always comical, just like going back to the conflicts of interest and the things that they go after the justices on. Congress doesn't have any conflicts of interest. They've exempted themselves from those sorts of things. So you see all these members of Congress voting on things that they have financial interests in. But with respect to this immunity, all the other branches have it. And they're telling the president that he doesn't have immunity for his official acts. It's crazy. It's like crazy town.
It's crazy.
So I expect this idea that somehow he has civil immunity from civil liability for official acts, and somehow he doesn't have it for criminal. It's really backwards. And it's
logically inconsistent. So it really, quite frankly, it's logically inconsistent. It cannot stand. I mean, I don't know. Let's see. That's why I have, hope and faith. The justices ruled before 9-0. That was very good about saying you can't remove Trump from the ballot. So I think, saner heads will, prevail in this situation. And meantime, poor President Trump is suffering in that kangaroo court in New York, which is absolutely outrageous. Alvin Bragg should be thrown out of office. And just like Fannie Willis, I mean, the whole lot of them are just a motley crew of,
all of them.
Disgrace to the legal system.
They have made it lawfare, and they have broken the bounds of what Fannie Willis and Alvin Bragg, they both ran, right? And Tish James ran on going after President Trump. I mean, this is the height of
and it's backfiring.
Of fascism, really. You know what I mean? Of
it
really
is.
An individual. So it's I like I said, I do believe. And again, I will also say this. Thank God I was in the Trump White House for 4 years and worked on a number of those confirmations, including Kavanaugh and Gorsuch.
Yes, remember those?
And remember, as I made a reference to, the independent counsel statute, which was a monstrosity of a law, it allowed federal judges to appoint a prosecutor to go after the president. That was upheld by the Supreme Court in an 8-1 decision, with Rehnquist writing that majority opinion. Scalia in dissent. That's the opinion that Kavanaugh was talking about this morning and referencing. Right? Just think about how crazy that opinion is, right? 8-1. So thank God, right, that there were 3 appointments by by President Trump, because you know what? I don't know where this would be if you had sort of that old Supreme Court allowing this sort of, these sorts of crazy opinions.
Yeah, it makes me scared, like a little worried about it, apprehensive. You're absolutely right. This is just, I don't know. I think after hearing what I heard today, and I was listening and watching it extensively, I have a feeling this is going in the right direction, but I don't want to jinx it.
I think I'm pretty confident it's going in the right direction, and I think it's going to go back down to the lower courts on a remand and fact finding on that. Clearly, the president has immunity for official acts with respect to any sort of criminal prosecution. That it's so, to me, baked into our system, and in fact that it hasn't happened for 230 years, 230 plus years, tells you what the answer is.
I think so.
And thank God this Supreme Court, I think, in the saner heads, talking about, you saw, again, Dreeben just dancing around trying to make these arguments when Gorsuch, I think Gorsuch did a spectacular job today.
He really was on his game.
He's all, you know what? I'm a big fan of Justice Gorsuch.
Me too.
I worked on his confirmation daily with
he's
him,
great.
and he's a brilliant,
Solid,
and just fearless. And so he pinned back Dreeben. Remember, he talked about the core. Oh, there's some powers that are core that Congress can't criminalize. And then Gorsuch asked him, well, something about some intent. He goes, well, maybe on that. So he says, okay, so now we're getting into looking at intent again. And that's just so dangerous, right?
It is.
Just like
I know.
President Clinton
he was just
during the Monica Lewinsky stuff, right?
Yeah.
He's bombing countries, right? To clearly deflect from his trial. Is that a crime if you're looking at intent? Why did he bomb that country? And so that's the part that, the Constitution, our history, the Supreme Court precedents all say presidents have immunity for official acts. And it doesn't leave them when they're no longer president. That would make no sense at all.
It would make no sense.
Cripple you taking bold, decisive actions, right? You need to make actions on the spot, in the heat of battle, in the heat of the moment. And we want presidents to make the best decision without fear that, down the road, I'm going to get prosecuted by the person who, is in office now, who I'm running against.
Yes, exactly.
But,
you can't act in your official capacity if you're worried constantly about reprisal in the future or, retribution. It's ridiculous.
The Democrats project. I mean, this is what they do, right? They always talk about President Trump and all these imaginary things. It's the Democrats who weaponize the justice department, who prosecute their political opponents, who try and put them in jail, who try and take them off the ballot box, right? Look at the geniuses who had the 14th Amendment argument, right? That somehow this was going to, everybody on the sort of the establishment legal world was that this is a slam dunk, right? They cooked it up into this fever dream that this was any kind of credible argument, when of course it wasn't. And of course they lost 9-0.
Sure.
So it's stunning to me how off the rails the left is right now and how much they want to get President Trump, right? And you said, I loved the opening, President Trump going, stopping and getting, a big shout out from the workers today at that construction site before he went to court, where the judge is making him stay when he doesn't have to be in court. It's just all to take him off the ballot, all to try and prevent him from being reelected. And the Democrats who talk about President Trump, this is what they do. This is what they do with the law. And I'm always an optimist in these discussions and with my friends and all when we talk about this stuff. We will come out on the other side and we will win. We just have to fight hard and come ready for battle every single day.
Yeah, I can tell it brought a smile to your face today too, like it did to mine. I see him out there and all the construction where the judge is probably silent, screaming inside.
Can you imagine Biden going out there? Right, that's the thing.
No, 6:30. It's like, give me a break. And it's such a great sign out there, and everybody just like loving him and taking pictures and chanting. And I mean, there's nobody like him. And I'm so glad you were a part of that whole American political history and getting those great justices in to the Supreme Court. Let's see how they rule. Let's see what happens. They're going to meet up, like you said, hopefully tomorrow, Friday. But It's interesting to watch, that is for sure, and this will be important legal precedent that is set for this country that will affect generations to come. So I'm glad we got a front row seat to it with you, my friend.
Thanks, Kimberly.
All right, Senior Fellow at the Center for Renewing America, the fabulous, brilliant attorney, Mark Paoletta. Thank you.